Right, let's
So the alternative, we're live.
yes. Or streaming, how's that? Hey, good afternoon.
Good, all right. So we are live. All right, you ready?
Welcome, I'm ready.
All right, so we'll have a roll call.
Mr. Hartline?
I'm here.
1 of 3, so we won't be voting on.
We won't be voting on anything, yes.
But we will go through the presentations.
I had no changes to the minutes, so we can bring that up at the next meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
that takes us to the bond refinancing.
Happy news.
See how that works, yep. So I think that was, as we shared at the board meeting, right? This was really fantastic news, right? I think it was, the impact was greater than we anticipated. And the feedback we got from investors was good. It was a broad range of buyers. And I think our rating calls with Moody's were very positive. So I try in advance of those. They sort of send you the questions that are going to come at you. And so I try to spend a lot of time preparing for those, to be answering, my goal is to be a question ahead of her every time, and making sure that we tie them together. So I think that was very good, maintaining our rating. So all of those are things that we've been talking about. I think, and it's not there. I'm gonna jump to here. This is what I wanted to show, wanted to talk about, right? So the rating is the key. Right? As I shared, I had PFM sort of do some back of the envelope. If you were one step down from that, so you're in an AA3, this is the impact. And if you're in an A1, I think is 2 steps down, and the impact of that, right? And that's anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million on the last 2 refinancings, right? So on that total last November and this last September and this October, those refinances, the difference would have been between $500,000 if we were 1 step lower, and it would be $1 million if we were 2 steps lower. So that's significant money.
So if we were a 2A1, the additional revenue that we would have received is not that significant though, correct?
If we were an AA1, right, it would be better. Right?
But it would
marginally,
yes.
marginally.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to sort of talk about here, right? So the rating math, right, the sort of scorecard, if you will, and they send that out and tell you sort of where you lie against the 10 metrics, right? And I think we have done well in improving the financial health of the district, right? So when I got here, as I mentioned before, right, we had a couple $100,000 in fund. We had in the general capital fund. We had $1 million maybe in the debt service fund, and we had our general fund of $10 million. That was all the money we had. So if you wanted to fix an air conditioner, you were almost going to need to refinance, right? And we had a refinance that happened just before I did, so we had some debt money that we had to spend and take care of. But we didn't have a healthy fund balance. We significantly improved that over time. And that's one of the things that they called out. And these are factors that Moody's identified as important, right? Healthy financial position, strong fund balance. And I have them in green because those are things that we control, right? We control those items. We're making those decisions. The board is making those decisions, whether to utilize, as we go into the budget season, whether to utilize fund balance to offset debt, right, or offset a loss, or finding other ways to manage that. That's the key. On the other side, the other part is the community you live in, right? And so last September's debt funding, I went sort of round and round with the gentleman at Moody's, trying to say, how do I get to there? And he quite frankly said, Tom, I know you'd like to be an AA1 and be at the top of the world, but your community plays a factor in that, right? And while you could be maintaining fund balance, you could be doing the best job you can financially, the community you live in limits what that's going to be. So while it's good, right? We have a good community, a strong tax base. Those grades are somewhat dependent on things that are outside of your own ability, right? So factors that could lead to an upgrade, continued growth in reserves. So they would want to see a move. We are like 20. They want to see us like at 25% on the reserve side.
Isn't there a limit though to what we can from the state have in reserves?
The limit that the state puts on is unassigned general fund balance, right? So you cannot have a large bucket of cash that is unassigned general fund balance, right? So we manage that through the debt service fund and the capital fund. Those are our outlets to reserve cash.
What do we have right now in our debt service fund?
I think we are about 20 cents. We were about 20 cents. I think there's like 15 in the debt service fund and
15 million debt
11
service.
in the general fund. So we're talking about Harrisburg and the lack of cash, right? The lack of a budget, right? So we have roughly $27 million in cash that should it go the distance, right? We would begin to use. And as you point out very accurately at every board meeting, that money sitting in Harrisburg earning somebody cash, right? It's not helping us out. So that's a problem.
So what is our annual expenditure for capital that we pay for capital or for debt service rather?
What is what?
So how much do we pay a year in debt service? $8 million a year?
Yes.
So we have about 2 years of debt service in reserve.
Yeah. But we utilize that debt service account to transfer money to where it is needed, as we have done, right? We've looked at it for capital, or we've looked at it making those other decisions, right? The other area that would need to change is the material growth in the full value per capita of over 130, right? We are at 118. So that distance is what we would need to do to be the next grade, which is what it is, right? So I think we are doing as good as we can with the tools that we have and the community support for us. On the downgrade side, right? I think it's a lot easier to fall than move up. Right, a material decline in reserves or liquidity that could cost us, a grade. Growth and leverage. So if our debt continues to grow, and we are then sort of more highly leveraged as an organization, we've been working to chip away at it. I think Moody's looks at that and say those guys are, working to minimize that, and we have a lot of room within that. And then significant enrollment losses. Enrollment's sort of an interesting one. That most districts are losing enrollment, right? So when I was speaking with the lady in September this year for this most recent, she was happy that we are holding and or increasing our enrollment, and I used for that discussion the study that we had done 2 springs ago, that we published 2 springs ago, and used that study. That's wonderful that you guys are doing that. You're proactively going through this effort. So I think that was a good sign as well. And I think we are showing growth. I think the growth at Centennial starts now, as we talked about it, right? I think when we look at birth rates and then when they start kindergarten, right? I think that acceleration starts this year and really in next year, and then it's consistent
Right.
for a good number of years. And that was what the study shared with us.
So from a business standpoint, if you lose enrollment, okay, so you now are educating less students.
Yeah.
You have the two directions, either your student to teacher ratio goes up,
Right.
Okay, or if you do not replace teachers as they retire,
Yeah.
your expenses go down.
Yeah.
So with your expenses going down, why then does that play in as a negative to your, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I could see if you lose 1,000 students to charter school, that's one thing. But to see 100 students, or it's kind of counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's an odd one, but it's one that they do look at, right? And I guess it probably, as I've asked it and I've gotten the, yes, I get it, right? But
It
it's
just
still
doesn't
important.
seem,
And I imagine that it has something to do with the community that you're in.
Okay.
And if they are a community that's sending kids to school, that may be a different community than the Greenwoods living on Wentz Drive. We don't have any kids, right? And everybody else has, so we're out picketing and complaining, right? But we understand that. So, it's sort of like a neighborhood, the rollover of a neighborhood, right? So when we moved into our house 20 years ago, we had the youngest kids.
with the same way.
And then we
Yep.
sort of grew up. Now the kids that, had older kids, those guys are moving into the city or they're relocating somewhere else. And we're camped out. So I think those are what gets at it.
Yeah, it just, like I said, it just kind of seems counterintuitive to a business model of decreasing your expense ratios,
Yep,
but losing
no,
your
I
rating.
totally agree, right? It would cost us sort of less.
Yeah.
So those were it was really these that I wanted to highlight and talk about in this meeting, just where the impacts are and the things that we control versus the things that we can't control.
And I know we've
Keep
talked
that
about
in
this.
mind as we enter the budget cycle.
Right, so I know we've talked about this too before, that this is the last bite of the apple for
Yep.
7-8 years at least.
We have the one this
Coming in
spring, February.
Which is a small
Which
one.
is small. It's like a 600,000 refinance. So it's not gonna generate significant savings. But it will be a
But savings
little
is
bit, right? Savings is savings.
And it's more than the expense of doing it, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so unless we are taking, and I don't want to see our rating doesn't become important because it affects other things, but unless we're going to be doing some type of bond or some type of bond issuance for something else, which,
Which
our
you very well
schools are
could
now
be.
20 years old.
Which you very well could do, right? So if
Right.
we utilize that capital and we're not maintaining any degree of surplus or any amount of money that we can feed into that, then the only other way to fund capital is through bond, right? And that those will be that'll be, I would imagine, a slightly different picture, right? The questions when we did that in 2019, when I started, the fall of 2019, we had a small bond issuance.
Right.
Covered the turf at high school and some facilities work, right? It wasn't, the questions weren't dramatically different, the outcomes weren't dramatically different, but it did increase and add to our debt. Okay? All right, any questions on that? No, seeing none, I'm gonna jump to the question.
No.
Feel free.
Feel free. To sort of the treasurer's report. Vera has done a great job of sort of maintaining the report inventory for us. We are gonna, as we sort of started the year a little bit in the hole, I think the budget delay hits us, gets sort of everything, as I think I said the last meeting, everything has a season. When it gets out of season, between that and more importantly, the audit, which sort of stretched into into, August and September, really has us sort of out of sync a little bit. I'm going to get back to the forecast 5 modeling, and we'll be able to get those things rolling. For now, these are, you can see the FY 25-26 fiscal year to date revenue of 87,687,000 against 21.5 million in expenses coming across those groups, right? And we'll talk in a second about the state side. You can see there's $1.6 million from the state. That is really the homestead farmstead payment, number one. So we'll get I think we get the next one in October. And that'll be those, but that's the only money of matter that's coming in.
I'm sorry, you said October 3rd?
23rd.
23rd, okay, thank you. Okay, that's you.
She's like an encyclopedia. Borrow her memory, right? She's what's the date? 23rd. How much is the money? 1.6 million.
1.6512.
Okay.
Right, for, you're gonna do expenses next, and I'm gonna ask what accounts for the fact that only 40 or 50,000 of a budgeted 10.8 of other operating and financing expenditures has been spent so far with.
Well, because, so that's a great question, right? This includes only 1 month of teachers, right? So the teachers just started in September, right? At the very end of August. So when we look at compensation, and that's certainly our largest share, right? September is the shortest, it's just a month's worth in all practicality, right? So it's maybe 5 weeks worth of salary because they start at the end of August and then they move forward. So it's probably a total of 3 payrolls worth of teacher expense and support staff expense in many cases, right? So IAs, PCAs, they're not working necessarily over the summer. The teachers aren't working over the summer. As we've talked about before, teacher pay, if teachers get paid out over the summer, that gets rolled back and expensed in the year of the contract. Okay.
But what else is included in other expenditures and financing as far as?
So there are that's the 5,000. So there are some payments that we make on like leased equipment, things like that hit that bucket. That is part of that 46. There are some minor charges like that.
Yeah, it makes up 8% of the budget, so. Budgeted at 10 million or 15 million, so
right.
50, so.
Okay. These this is sort of the detailed list of on the revenue side, and again, sort of the 7,000 numbers, right? Excluding really any state money short of that the homestead farmstead rebate money. On the expense side, so there's some 5,000. So it's a minor debt service, as I said. Right, so they are sort of leased and other loans that we have that we're making payments towards. Okay. And so just because we have to, it's the elephant in the room, the budget stalemate in Harrisburg. This just shows sort of this year compared to last year and where we stand. Last year through September, we had $5 million in revenue collected from the state. We're at 1.6 million, so that difference of 3.4 million is sort of real, waiting to get money. And as importantly, we would have expected the last of the FY 25 subsidy payments from the PESers, the subsidy payments from the state for PESers, right? They pay about half of it. We would have expected that lags. We typically get it in August or September, and then we account for it, sort of like salaries, right? We push it back into FY '25. But, the world today, we're as much cash-based thinking. You're put together a good spreadsheet analysis. It looks at really the district on a cash side. So what are we spending out? What's our AP going out the door every day? How much is our payroll? What's our debt service going to be like in December? Because that's our next debt service payment. And how is that going to shift if we're receiving these buckets of money going forward? So she's done a great job around that. But this is one of those numbers that doesn't show up on the P&L because it's revenue for last year, but the cash is coming out this year. Or the lack of cash.
Right. So if we're looking at last year's ending numbers on the budget, are we going to be 3.4 short until that comes in? Or is that payment's already been made, therefore it's?
So on a cash basis, you won't see it, right? So the balance sheet is sort of the governor to that, right? So in last year, it appears in our financial statements last year as a receivable, right? That we then get in September and we wash it out, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's not in our cash at the end of the year, right? And it's not in our cash today.
Okay.
Because we're sort of a cash-based thinking now as opposed to modified accrual basis that we govern sort of public schools.
Okay.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hopefully they'll get off their butts and do something.
Yeah. And I have, this is a slide that we've shown in various budget presentations. If I have this one in the deck to share with the CEA today, and just as a reminder of how, where the money comes and what timing it is. So what this report shows is, this is for last year, so sort of for the full 12 months of last year, cash balances, and as that money comes in, right? The dotted line is 2 years ago. The blue line is last year. You can see it's sort of interesting because it does reflect the reality. As we delayed, last year's budget was delayed a little bit. Our date for the discount date was September 8th or 9th a year ago. It was September 15th this year, right? But it actually changes the marker on where that cash is coming in, right? So you're actually getting a little more cash later in the cycle because people have a little bit more time to give it to you. They don't need to get it in by August 30th. They can get it in September.
Soon we get the bills out.
Exactly. So as long as we get the budget, as soon as we get the budget finalized, really marks that, right?
Yeah.
That difference between, an August 31st discount date, which is really where you get the majority of your cash, right? All of the loans, all the mortgage banks out there, they're sending us checks inside of that 2% window for the discount. And not waiting till you just pay the face or much less a penalty. So it just shows sort of the picture of where we are. So we store up cash and then we lose it, sort of like the P&L does, right? So we have 80 million in 80,000 in expenses. When we were looking here, sorry, right? And we only have 21 million in expenses. So we made 61 million, but that goes away as the year rolls on. Okay, any questions?
So what determines the discount amount at 2%? Are there any districts out there that are 3 or 4% or 1 or 0.5%, or is 2% a
That's
legislative?
the number.
That's the legislative.
That's the number. Okay.
Okay.
I know we're set to meet next Friday
Yes.
morning. So, again, if there was a more crowded room, I was seeking to get, I've gotten your feedback from you. We'll have some more
You're
feedback
constantly
in a
getting my
week.
feedback. Sorry.
Sort of understanding the request from the board, which is, authorizing by December, a 3-year budget proposal, I guess strategy is what I'm thinking of it. I'm trying to make sure that that's consistent, with what that expectation is. It may not be a dollars and cents plan, but a strategy relative to items that we should be working through.
Yeah, I think if we the way I take it is that, all right, we have a $5 million deficit this year, which it's because of the state, we can't actually decide whether or not we're on target for a 5 million, a 3 million, a 7 million at this point. But that we look at that and say next year, we're cutting books by 28%. And then we're, and the plan to go to more digital literature at that point, and that's going to save us this amount over so many years, and it's that percentage of the budget. That's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. I mean, I would like us to take a top to bottom look at this and see what we can do. Obviously, every year as we pay down our debt, the percentage that our debt service is of our budget becomes less. Good thing. Our special education costs are through the roof.
Yep.
That is something that, we have to be very cognizant of not wanting to affect the education of our students, but we need to find if there's a better way for both them and for us. That is something that's important. We need to look at what our long-term capital expenditures plan to be, are realistic. I mean, in the past, we had a rolling list of things that we wanted to get done.
Yep.
And as we look at those things, are there large ticket items on that? Are there items that are, one-offs that we do as we get things done? And our maintenance staff, we talked about it during the meeting. Saving the district money and doing repairs and stuff is just phenomenal. We used to talk about when we actually supported 3 pools in the district, the fact that the maintenance team kept the diving boards and the pump equipment and the exhaust equipment all running at a level that, where we weren't replacing or needing the replacement every 5 years like other districts, we were doing it every 12 years because it just wasn't wearing out because they were doing a great job on it.
Right.
I mean, all you need to do is look at the gymnasium floors to see,
For sure.
the work that is done. We need to look at transportation. Hopefully the adjustments that we make, we're going to be able to bring down the expenditures and overtime in transportation and be able to kind of even that out. I mean, that to me also is a bit of a security issue. If you're having individuals work 60, 70 hours a week, there's a fatigue factor there, and we don't want anything to happen to our students, and we don't want anything to happen to our personnel either. I mean, it's, so that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Okay.
Questions, suggestions? I mean, I'm open to anything, folks.
No, that's good. That's a good insight.
Yeah.
And will allow us to sort of plan for that as we start. So,
I mean, we're always looking to cut costs for insurance, for health insurance.
Mhm.
I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
If the first look I got for my health insurance for next year is any indication, it's going to be a rough year.
Yeah.
Because mine is looking to go up. I think they're proposing a 15 to 18% increase.
Wow.
In mine. And we've had no claims.
Say that again?
My health insurance, I have private market health insurance.
Yeah.
Our first look was a 15 to 18% increase. Yeah.
Wow.
And we had no significant claims this year other than basically wellness checks, fortunately.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So we've been fortunate, knock on wood, with the health trust,
Yes.
sort of managing those costs. We'll continue to reach out to them as they begin to create their looks.
Right.
we're still challenged on the specialty drug
We know that.
side, right? We
Yeah.
do have increased co-payments, but there's still, it's a marginal number.
I think some of the specialty drugs are starting to come down because you're starting to see some competition. Like the GL1s and those types of things.
Those are the big spenders right now.
But,
You're advertising during the World Series.
yeah,
You know,
you can afford it.
you know the bill is not coming down fast
Yeah,
enough.
not coming enough, yeah.
Right?
But, we still do have individuals with family members that have serious medical conditions that eat up a lot of, and that's the point of the community of a collective health insurance plan.
No, I think
So-
as we shared with CEA in the healthcare forum a week or so ago, right, we have about 20 users of specialty drugs, right? And that out of the 500 plus
Right.
members within it, and that's using half of the expense or the spend for those drugs. So it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge everybody's faced with.
Does the health insurance trust have a compounding pharmacy that they deal with, that they may have a discount? So like I know there are compounding pharmacies out there, and if they have one that is cavitated towards or licensed with the trust, we may be able to get those drugs for those 20 individuals through that compounding pharmacy at a reduced rate.
I've done,
I know you've bounced this 1,000 ways to
No, that's a new one, right?
Yeah.
So
It's just,
in years of negotiating, whether the big companies or small companies, dealing with health insurance, I've never heard the term compounding pharmacy.
so they're private
I will
pharmacies
look at
that do drug, that will make the drugs. So, if you, very similar to, chemotherapy companies where they make the chemotherapy specific to the individual. Compounding pharmacies will make the drug formulation. I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but with some of the specialty drugs, it may be out there. I don't know. Just thought.
I will be my first message tonight.
And when they go, huh? And then
they
it's
know?
not,
What
then
do
it's
they
a nothing. Yeah.
Okay, so again, I think we'll jump into that.
Yeah.
Both feet
Yeah.
next week, and I'll try to prepare
Right.
some at least historical numbers around that so that we can begin.
I mean, if we could get numbers from the trust sooner than, at the last minute.
Yeah.
That would be great. And if we could, I know that they're constantly negotiating, but, getting numbers in May for a June budget or something, be nice to have them sooner so that we have some idea what we're dealing
We
with.
pushed back a year or so ago on that very subject, right? And I think we're now getting them in that March window. But that was a big, we were getting them way too late in the past. We were getting them in April-ish before we were able to get them squared away. So I think they've worked to get those looks happening sooner in the cycle. As we've shared with them, right? If we had a calendar year, then it's fine, but that's not where we're at. You have a bunch of small entities with that calendar. You have a few big school districts that are working off a different calendar. We need to have that view.
And our open enrollment is gonna be on schedule this year. Because last year wasn't a little off. We had to have two separate open enrollments and because of the way the contract negotiations went.
We did a year, is that just last year? Wasn't it this past year? Because that followed the CEA contract, right?
Right.
And so that would have been the 24-25 school year, right?
Right. So
That would have been,
last year, yeah.
that would have been November of 24. We would have had that extra open enrollment.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we should be right on schedule this year.
Yeah, we should be.
Right.
We should be.
Okay. Hopefully that'll help as well.
The last things that we have, and make sure I didn't miss anything on the agenda. Budget discussion up. So is those informational items. that we'll have. The PISLAF reports. The Department of Education issued the base Act 1 index, which is 3.5%. There's a number of schools in Bucks County that get the additional leeway that's giving them a little bit more points. I was going to put that up. I don't know if that's helpful for people to see. Or the 3.5 is our number, and
It's, I mean, the surrounding districts that some of them are, have the option to go higher as a,
Sure.
I don't think it's harmful to put it out there.
I'll make sure to include that. I have that.
And maybe a brief, and the brief explanation as to why they have a different index.
Okay, excellent. And then I also have the timeline for the budget. So
That's all based on primaries.
if, this is the notice that we get from the state. We've included a little bit of history on the sideways look, so sort of where we have been on the Act 1. And then kind of feel like Vanna White here. And then we've included sort of the generic PDE timeline for schools. There isn't a presidential election, so we're not consolidated up front. And the date, if you were to look for an exception, or Act 1 exception, that's still the end of January that would need to be made in. All right.
We need to vote on the accepting the budget timeline. I don't remember.
We'll accept it, but I typically have one more tailored to us.
Right.
That we put in. And that is, I think that's mentioned in here.
So I thought I saw something.
Right, so detailed district plan will be shared in November for the board to adopt as our plan. All right?
Just wanted to be sure it wasn't something we had to put on the agenda regardless.
And then the only other two items we had that we'll still bring to the full board for review is Lori Denny attending the PASBO Food Service Conference. She went to that last year. I think she found great value in it. So she'd like to return. I think that's in hundreds of dollars range. And then the approval for the agreement with the Bucks County IU to issue our homestead exclusion notices, right? So anyone who hasn't registered, doesn't have that, they send them a letter every year to see if they can get them enrolled. So that's it's $1.07, 7.8 is what that's going for. It's a bit of a higher number than it was last year when I broke it down.
But I think postage has gone up.
The number is on the postage side.
I know.
If you look at it, it's really, so they provide this update, right? And the number's really in the processing fee. It's jumped considerably. I sent them an email when I got it, and they said that's what their provider gave them. So it is an estimate of that number. And I think it's roughly $4,000, a little over $4,000 for Centennial based on 3,716 parcels, which is the number we used last year. All right. And I think that's all we got.
Anything for the good of the order? Thank you all very much. Next meeting, November 14th?
13th, November 13th.
13th. Oh, there we go.
Right. I guess you can adjourn the meeting.
I say we will adjourn the meeting and you can push the button. Thank you.